Hello, hope you are all doing well. I'm Dr. Vikas and welcome to my channel Vikas Biologist, where you will learn biology topics useful for various exams. Let us start. Today we will learn a very important topic from immunology, and the topic is immunity and types of immunity. In this session, you are going to learn about what is immunity. We will learn about history of immunity, types of immunity, what is innate immunity and its barrier system, what is acquired immunity and its features, what is passive and active immunity and its types. Let us begin. What is immunity? Immunity is the ability of the body to protect against all type of foreign bodies like bacteria, virus, toxic substance, etc., whichever enters the body. This immunity is also termed as disease resistance, and the lack of immunity is known as susceptibility. Immunity, by definition, can be defined as a complex biological system endowed with the capacity to recognize and tolerate whatever belongs to the self and to recognize and reject what is foreign, that is non-self. So immunity is the one which defines the self and the non-self. The immune system and the immune cells play a major role in providing immunity to an individual. Let us look into history of immunity, how the immunity has developed in the course of history. The concept of immunity, if you look into, has dated back at least up to 5th century BC to the Greece. Thucydides wrote of individuals who recovered from the plague, which was raging in Athens at the time. These individuals who had already contracted the disease recovered and became immune or exempt. The word immunity is derived from Latin, which means immunis, which literally means exemption. The core concept of immunity has begun in late 1700s, to be specific around 1796, where Edward Jenner found that vaccination with cowpox protected against the different, though closely related, disease smallpox. It was the efforts of Louis Pasteur work on variolation and vaccination and the Robert Koch's work on germ theory led to the development of immunology. Now, since you have understood what is immunity, let us look into types of immunity. There are three main types of immunity. If you look into, the immunity is divided into three types. First one is the innate immunity. Second one is the acquired immunity, and the third one is the active and passive immunity. We will look into each one of them in detail and try to understand what each one of them means. Let us begin with what is innate immunity. The innate immunity is also called as natural immunity or non-specific immunity. In Latin, innatus means inborn. Innate or natural immunity is so named because it is present at birth and does not have to be learned through exposure to an invader. Innate immunity is inherited. That means from the parents, you are inheriting innate immunity and it protects from birth throughout the life. Innate immunity is non-specific as it lacks specific responses to specific invaders. So innate immunity lacks specificity. Innate immunity lacks immunological memory also. It does not remember specific foreign antigens and does not provide any ongoing protection against future infection. It occurs to the same extent each time a microorganism or the foreign material is encountered. Innate immunity can be classified into species, racial, and individual immunity. In the species immunity, it is that in which a disease affecting one species does not affect the other species. Like the human diseases, sometimes they may not be affecting the animal diseases, and animal diseases, sometimes they are not affecting the human diseases. Racial immunity, on the other hand, is in which various races shows difference in their resistance to certain infectious diseases. And in the individual immunity, some individuals of a race experience fewer or less severe infection than the other individuals. Innate immunity acts as a first line of defense by providing different barriers to the entry of the foreign agents into our body. It consists of barrier systems that prevent the entry of pathogen or the foreign element into the body. If we look into the type of barriers in the innate immunity, we have four types of barriers which are restricting the entry of the foreign pathogens. The first one is the physical barrier, followed by physiological barrier. We have the cellular barriers and the cytokine barriers. Let us look into what each one of them means. When we look at the physical barriers, they are the mechanical barriers to many of the microbial pathogens. The best example here is the skin and the mucous membrane. Outer tough layer of the skin, that is stratum corneum, and the mucus secretions by the mucous membrane prevents entry of the microorganisms. When we look at the physiological barriers, we have the acid of the stomach, bile juice, cerumen, that is the earwax, lysozyme in the body fluids, nasal hairs, sebum or the sweat. All these are acting as physiological barriers. The cellular barriers include the leukocytes, macrophages, natural killer cells, the complement system, inflammation, and the fever. These are all categorized under the cellular barriers. The cytokine barriers, when you look at cytokine barriers, cytokines are the chemical messengers of immune cells, like the interleukins produced by the leukocytes, lymphokines produced by the lymphocytes, tumor necrosis factor, and the interferons. All these are the cytokine barriers. All these four barriers are providing innate immunity. Now, when you look at the acquired immunity is also called as the adaptive immunity or specific immunity. It is so named because the immunity that an individual acquires after the birth. It is adaptive. That means the person acquires after the birth. It is specific and is mediated by antibodies or lymphocytes or by both, which makes the antigen inactive. The main features of acquired immunity are its specificity, discrimination between the self and the non-self. Diversity is another feature of the acquired immunity, and memory. That means once the antigen is encountered in the immune system, the memory is retained, and on subsequent encounter with that antigen, the immune system responds more quickly and more abundantly. Okay, so the acquired immunity is specific in action. It can recognize a vast variety of foreign antigens, so you call it as the diversity, and it can discriminate between the self, that is of our own body, and the foreign antigen, which is the non-self. These are the features of the acquired immunity. Now let us look at the third kind of immunity, which is called as the passive and acquired immunity. We will look at each one of them separately. What is passive immunity? When we specifically talk about passive immunity, when the ready-made antibodies are directly injected into a person to protect the body against foreign antigens, it is called as passive immunity. It provides an immediate relief. It is not long lasting. It may sometimes lead to complications in certain cases. Passive immunity may again be classified into natural or artificial. Already I've just shown you, I'm showing it again. Passive immunity is of two types: natural passive immunity and the artificial passive immunity. When you look at natural passive immunity, it is the resistance transferred passively from mother to the fetus through placenta. The IgG antibodies, that is immunoglobulin G antibodies, can cross through the placental barrier to reach the fetus and thus providing immunity in the fetus. This is a good example of natural passive immunity. Another example is after birth, immunoglobulins are passed to the newborn through the breast milk. The colostrum or the mother's first milk is rich in immunoglobulin A antibodies. This is an example for natural passive immunity. Artificial passive immunity is the resistance passively transferred to a recipient by administration of antibodies? This is not a natural process, so we call it as a artificial passive immunity. This is done by administration of hyperimmune sera. The serum contains the antibodies. So antibody injections are given to the person. When you look at what is active immunity, in the active immunity, we see that person's own cells produce antibody actively in response to infection or vaccination. It is a slow process and takes time. It is long lasting and is harmless. Active immunity may again be classified as natural or artificial. Active immunity can be natural active immunity and as well as it can be a artificial active immunity. The natural active immunity is the one where a person who has recovered from an attack of an infection such as smallpox or measles or mumps develops natural active immunity. Artificial active immunity is the immunity induced by vaccines. Example of vaccines such as BCG vaccine for tuberculosis and TAB vaccine for enteric fever. Finally, we will look into difference between the active immunity and passive immunity. So here is the chart which shows you difference between the two. Active immunity is produced actively by the host immune system, whereas passive immunity is received passively by the host and no participation of the host immune system takes place. Active immunity is induced by infection or by contacts with immunogens. Passive immunity is conferred by introduction of ready-made antibodies. Active immunity affords durable and effective protection. Passive immunity protection is transient and less effective. Active immunity is effective only after a lag period. That means a time required for generation of antibodies is there noted in the active immunity, whereas passive immunity is effective immediately. Immunological memory is present in case of active immunity, whereas no immunological memory is seen in case of passive immunity. A quick recap of what we have learned today. Immunity is the ability of the body to protect against all type of foreign bodies. Immunity is of three types: innate, acquired, active, and passive. Active and passive immunity are again classified as natural. Hope you have learned the topic for today. Do write to me in the comment section what you have learned and what you have gained from this particular video. I will be looking for your response. Soon I will be coming with more videos so you can learn more actively. Thanks for watching the video. Do subscribe, like and share. If you want to watch video on new topics, do write to me in the comment section.